Good morning. My name is Sheena Shaw, and today I would like to talk to you about the preservation of local history and why that is so very important. Today I will be taking you on a tour of Fort Parker and telling you about the history of Fort Parker. But first, I would like to take you on a tour. All right, so when we come in here, it is a place where you can see some of the artifacts. The issue right now, and it has been stated, is preservation, because this area is exposed to the elements. So here you have holes and holes here, and the map is just water damage and it's getting molded. That's one of the main struggles here at the fort, and those pictures are just completely ruined. But you have some native artifacts, maybe not from Cynthian or Kawana themselves, but you do have some artifacts. Here is some information about Luther Thomas Martin Plummer, up there, and then some nifty little things. That picture is pretty cool because it says 5 Aquana's children: Wananda, Wayote, Harold, Len, and Baldwin. And then in this picture on the left is Kawana, who was Cynthia Ann Parker's son and the last Comanche chief. Another picture of Kawana. And then I want to say this picture in the back at the bottom is actually with Teddy Roosevelt. In my research, I found a newspaper article where Roosevelt was visiting in Oklahoma and came across Kawana, and so that's pretty interesting to note. And then more pictures of it's the same picture actually. Kawana again. So some interesting artifacts there. Pictures. And you do have the video that you can watch. So something else that's pretty cool is that the Parker family actually still gets together, and they have family reunions right here at the fort, which is pretty cool. And so you can do that. I want to say it was in March. And so here you can see kind of the family tree. So they all followed Elder John Parker. And then the elder John Parker had several sons. You had James W. Parker, Silas M. Parker, Benjamin F. Parker, and then several other people. Like you had Rachel Plummer and her husband, and then L.D. and Sarah Nixon. It says Mrs. Nixon Sr. was the mother of James W. Parker. Mrs. Kellogg, Mrs. Doody, Samuel Frost, Robert Frost, G.E. Dwight, David Falconberry, Seth Bates, Elisha England, and Old Man Lund. So several of these are the people. So Silas was Cynthia Ann Parker's father. So you have some artifacts here that are pretty neat about the Comanche. So you see the other side of Kawana's family, not just the Parker side. And there is a picture of Cynthia Ann, her tombstone at Fort Sill. Kind of standing off in the center, of course, it's really open. And you have 2 more houses over there that just kind of show you how it would look, time period pieces. The other block house in the corner. All right, so I've taken you on a brief tour of the fort, and so I want to spend a little bit of time talking to you guys about the preservation and why this is so important. One, this is local history for me. This is right outside my back door pretty much, and so I grew up coming here, but I didn't. When you're young, you don't really take in as much history, I guess, or I didn't at least, and so it wasn't until I got older that I really appreciated the history around me, specifically local history, because your towns are full of it. So then when I started researching my local history, there are a lot of things that I really didn't know about Fort Parker. So today I wanted to briefly give you reasons why this is so important for us to learn, and why preservation is so important, because without it, we're gonna lose the past, and we're not gonna really know who we are as people, or how our society came to be. So, for those of you that don't know, my name is Sheena Shaw. I work locally at Mexia High School. I also work for Navarro College. I am a U.S. History, Government, and Economics instructor, but I also have a master's degree in education with teaching and learning in history, and I'm currently pursuing my PhD in history. So, the preservation of local history is important for people to learn about the past. Preserving artifacts and sites and writings from people who predate ourselves allows us to learn about how, what, and who shaped that society. Learning about the everyday lives of people is very important, because some of what we would call traditions come from the past. All traditions come from the past. So sometimes we celebrate things we don't even know why we're celebrating them. So it's really important for us to learn about that so that we can understand our society, understand our culture, and understand about the people who predate us. Today I'm standing inside Fort Parker, which is located between Mexia and Groesbeck, Texas. Okay, so this is the site of Parker's Fort, and I gave you the tour of that. So what happened is, between 1833 and 1834, the Parker family and some adjoining families with the Parker family began building this fort before the land grants were ever established. So the land grant was given to Silas Parker, and you can find that off of the Texas Land Grant website, but it's also published in a 1971 book, and I'll give you that description at the bottom of my video. So the fort construction actually began before the land grant was ever given, and the whole purpose of this fort was for protection against Native American attacks, because the Parker family was on the frontier. There's not a lot near here, so they needed that protection. On May 19th, 1836, of course, the day of the massacre, there were only 3 men at the fort. So what happened, it was early that morning, most of the men left the fort to go farm nearby, about a mile away. They were farming. So it only left 3 men at the park. At the fort. You had Benjamin, you had one of the elders, John, and so they were the only people here. Shortly after the men left, there was a raid on the fort by the Comanche and Kiowa natives, and 8 members were kidnapped, and several were killed. Of those kidnapped was Cynthia Ann Parker. She was 9 years old, and her younger brother, John, who was 6, maybe 5, at the time they were both kidnapped. For 25 years, Cynthia Ann Parker ends up living with the Comanche. She ends up marrying one of their chiefs, Pettinacona, and they have 3 children together. They have Kawana, Pecos, and Prairie Flower. And so she lives with them for 25 years. She has completely forgotten her Anglo way of life, and she has completely immersed herself in this Native American culture. And so for 25 years, she had lived that. And then she's recaptured on the Peace River by Texas Rangers under Sol Ross. And with her is her daughter, Prairie Flower. Her husband, Pettinacona, and Kawana and Pecos were off hunting. And so she's recaptured. She never sees her sons again. She never sees her husband again. She doesn't know if they even survived the attack. And so this happens in 1860, and Prairie Flower will die in 1864, and Cynthia Ann will die shortly after that. She tries to escape several times after being given back to her uncle because she cannot adapt to the Anglo ways of life. So she tries to escape. She doesn't get to, and she will die of a broken heart. I'm sorry, it is so windy here today that my thing is not staying still. So Kawana never gets to see his mom again. And the interesting thing about this is that in a letter that was addressed to Governor Campbell, Kawana, after Cynthia Ann Parker dies, Kawana wants to come back and get her body and take it to Fort Sill where he lives. But he's really afraid to come into Texas because he'd gotten in trouble for hunting on Texas land. And so he's asking permission to not get arrested for hunting illegally. And if Governor Campbell will allow him to come get his mother. So I thought that was interesting. However, back to preservation though, since its erection in 1835, 4 or 5, when it was completed, the fort had fallen into complete disrepair after the attack was over. By the 1860s, other settlers who were moving into the area see the abandoned fort, and they start taking apart the fort to use the timbers in their own buildings. So there was pretty much nothing left of this fort by the end of the century. And so in the 1930s, though, when it is time for the centennial anniversary of Texas, they decide to rebuild the fort, and the Civilian Conservation Corps is going to be behind rebuilding the fort. And so this is the replica that you see behind me today, and then it's completely redone with help in 1967, with help from the Huntsville prisoners. So a lot of effort did go into this. Asking about funding, so how do you preserve things? Well, it costs a lot of money to do so, and so in order for Fort Parker to stay afloat, they get $20,000 from the city of Mexia, they get $20,000 from the city of Groesbeck, and then Limestone County gives them $20,000. Most of the funds, though, that they have to raise by activities and events that they host here at the fort, and then by admission into the fort itself. So a lot of time and effort has to go in just to get enough money to keep this place going, and it is, as you can see, in desperate need of some updating, some repairs, just so that it is safe for visitors to come see. I showed you the pictures of the artifact room and how those elements were just exposed, and how the weather was just ruining pictures and maps. And so we do need to make sure that we're preserving this history for generations to come, because without, most people don't even know this is here, and this is a vital part of Texas history. This is a vital part of American history. There's even been movies loosely based on the attack at Fort Parker. So we really do need to step up our game in preservation and getting the word out about these local history, these events, these sites, so that people can come check them out and we can keep the legacy going. Thank you.